Hello, everyone. My name is Christopher Benge,
I'm Anthony Ruvolo.
and this is our lesson plan that we have designed for teaching adolescents. It's an interdisciplinary lesson plan. So the context, we all know what the context is. We have a bunch of different students in an urban school that has mostly low C's and all their stuff. So they're not doing anything super great, but they're probably about average as everyone else. Big differences is that they have a very low social economical status, so they're not very don't have a lot of good resources, and they're generally on the poor side. And then we also have a great amount of diversity. So we have a lot of types of students in our school, which makes it much more fun for everybody involved. We also have a lot of students who have different concerns and needs for learning. So we have students that have an auditory and learning disorder that makes it more tricky for them to understand and use language. We have some students that do not speak English as their first language. So we have some of those English language learners that we have to address. And then also a good handful of people who are struggling with reading skills. So it makes it much more challenging for them to be able to follow along with reading tasks. So, and we also have one student in our class that also has ADHD. So that makes it more interesting when we have to try to keep everyone on task and on track. Our central focus here. The central focus and idea of this lesson plan is that we are going to present and define the two words of population and sample. We're going to be able to figure out what are the exact differences, or generally what are the differences between those two vocabulary words, and then use provided data on a population and a sample to then find and draw conclusions based on what's happening. So here are our content and skill standards that we're addressing that are from our standards.
So there's a few different learning objectives we are trying to do during this day one lesson. One of them is to define population and the sample. And with that, we have different types of assessments depending on what the objective is and when we'll do it in the lesson. So for example, when we define population and sample, it will be evaluated on our exit ticket when the students have to define what a population is and what a sample is. And of course, this could be near the beginning and towards the middle of the lesson when we explain what the population and sample is, but at the end of the lesson, that'll be what the exit ticket is. We need to explain the difference between sample and the population. That's what students will have to do as well. This will be evaluated in the exit ticket as well. This can be evaluated from the students' definitions of population and sample, and also the examples that they give, because we will be doing a certain lesson where we will have a population and we'll have a sample, and they have to distinguish between the two. This will also be addressed in the middle of the body when they have to realize what the differences are between a sample and population. And then at the end of the lesson and the conclusion, there will be the exit ticket as well, where they will be asked this generally the same question and try to provide examples of it. And then also they'll have to explain what might occur in a population through data given from the sample. And then students will be observed and evaluated during the discussion period. This will be evaluated at the end of the lesson body and into the exit ticket. The teacher will kind of just be going around trying to understand what students' conceptions are of what they might think happened to a population through the data that is given.
Yeah, so generally you can think of that as an informal formative assessment. So there's no real record of this, but it's just a general observation of what are the students saying, what's happening, what's going on in the classroom. So
exactly, it'll be informal assessments. It's not like a true formal, like a summative assessment. It's informal. That's all we are trying to do with this day one lesson. Okay, so once you have more differentiated instruction, you have to make it more differentiated to everyone in your classroom. Not just the general population of students, you have to be differentiated toward everyone and provide equity in the classroom. And so there's a few ways you have to do this for the groups or individuals that need this. So we have a student that has an auditory and language processing disorder. So they really can't process the language that well, and so the language will be written out for them, either on paper or on whiteboard, and the student will be able to understand the information that provided, which makes sense. And also we'll give them more time when they are explaining their thoughts, because it'll take a little more time for them to process the information that they are given and try to provide a response. And so we also have a student with ADHD, and the student will be provided a copy of the notes and definitions. So if they start to lose attention in the class, they'll have them for later, because it can be really difficult for them to pay attention. And once they get hooked on something else that is not in the classroom or not the central focus of the classroom, then it might spiral out of hand, or no, they just will not understand the lesson in general. And they'll also provide frequent breaks, so they will be able to concentrate more in class. You'd rather provide them like a minute or two break than have them provide no break and just not pay attention to the class at all. And then we also have an English learning learner, which they will be provided both in both their native language and English as well. which makes sense. So they can distinguish between the two and start to understand English a little bit better. And then this will be able to reference what other students are saying and how it relates to their own language, because they will be in groups most of the time, especially during the body of the lesson. So if they can reference between the two, then that will be able to help them understand more. And they'll also be able to give them more time to process their thoughts and explain it, because it can be really difficult coming from a different type of background to where they can explain their thoughts. So we have to give them more time to explain those thoughts, process the information that is given. And then we also have a few students who are struggling readers, actually. I think there's 3. And the scenarios will be read out loud to them by the teacher, and they'll be working in groups, so there's strong support from the students, which this is really important, especially for a lot of students, because being able to write in groups, having different types of backgrounds, different types of explanations will be really beneficial to students, especially when they're struggling readers, and then they can get better, more concise thoughts as a group, which will help them more in the long run. And then there will also be a Venn diagram to use to help them, allow them to see the information instead of just trying to read the information.
The great part is that we can actually see all of these in action through our lesson body. You can see these highlights that we have here where we're handing out those guided notes that get started into the lesson, and then be able to give those English learners that are copying the notes, they have both their English and their native language available. You see where you have Venn diagrams get integrated, so they can see what that looks like and then be able to start using that for the class. This big chunk here, we can see that we're doing group work. So our English language learner has strong students to work with to help understand English. Our struggling readers also have access to stronger peers who can help them understand what's going on with the words and stuff in the language. We have a little stretch break here after our first chunk of the lesson body for them to be able to take a second to think about what's going on, process what all the information is going on, and be able to then get themselves ready for the next stretch of this, which is the long stretch of this lesson plan. So then they go through all of this, and then down here again, we can see that we're using the whiteboards as a way to put information up for everybody to see. One thing as well is that might be able to, like, say, have groups come up and present their ideas as well. So that may also help some of the people who understand what are they actually talking about. So yeah, we have all that highlighted there. You can see where those different types of stuff are happening in the lesson plan itself. So yeah, that is basically our lesson plan. The reason it's relevant is that these are science and math skills that are going to last you a very long time in life. It's interdisciplinary because it's both a math and science stuff. You can see from our standards. We have a math standard here talking about the population and samples. We have the skills that are talking about, the science skills are talking about drawing their evidence, drawing their explanations, and skills like that that are very necessary for all aspects of life. It's challenging because there are a lot of standard mathematical practice stuff that is happening within the classroom. I won't bore you with the details, but those can be really challenging for students, especially when we start working with very large numbers like we are going to be using in this lesson plan. And then it's exploratory. That's a little harder for us to say here because we do have a very specific destination in mind, but we are giving the students time in groups to explore the data and figure out what are they looking for, what are they trying to find, and then to be able to use that for what they need to use it for. So yeah, and then it's just one of those things again, lifelong skills. So even if they don't use this, if they don't go forward to be a scientist, they might still use this in a different job outside. Like, oh hey, I need to work in an office, I need to help crunch numbers. Be able to find these type of trends in data, and the data is very helpful for that kind of a field. So lots of neat stuff like that.
Yeah, so thank you so much.
Have a great day, everyone.